They say the delivery room is where life begins. But for Elena, it was where her life shattered. Imagine pushing 3 miracles into the world, your body broken and exhausted, looking up for the hand of your husband, only to be handed divorce papers instead. Patrick didn't just leave her. He discarded her and their newborn triplets like yesterday's trash, mocking her poverty while checking his Rolex. But he made one fatal calculation. He didn't check the mail, because while he was busy destroying her life, a lawyer was desperately trying to find her. The broke, abandoned housewife he just walked out on had just become the sole heiress to a dynasty worth billions. And payback? Payback was going to be biblical. The beep of the heart monitor was the only consistent rhythm in Eleanor's chaotic world. The fluorescent lights of the delivery room at St. Jude's Medical Center hummed with an aggressive brightness, stinging her tired eyes. Her body felt like a battlefield, ravaged, sore, but strangely light. "You did beautifully, Mrs. Sterling." "Oh, sorry, Mrs. Vance," the nurse corrected herself, glancing at the chart before blushing. "Elena, 3 healthy baby boys. It's a miracle." Elena barely registered the slip-up. Her chest heaved as she looked at the 3 small, swaddled bundles in the clear bassinets next to her bed. Triplets. Leo, Sam, and Toby. They were tiny, their faces scrunched in the universal protest of being born, but they were here. They were safe. "Where is he?" Elena whispered, her voice rasping like sandpaper. "Where is Patrick?" The nurse bit her lip, looking toward the door. He's outside. He said he needed to take a call." "Do you want me to get him?" "Please," Elena said, tears of relief pricking her eyes. She wanted him to see them. She wanted to see that look in his eyes, the one he used to have when they first met 5 years ago, before his tech company, Vertex Systems, went public, before the money changed the texture of his skin and the temperature of his heart. She convinced herself that seeing his sons would melt the ice that had formed between them over the last few months. The door swung open. Patrick walked in. He wasn't wearing scrubs, nor did he have the disheveled, anxious look of a new father. He was wearing a bespoke charcoal suit, tailored to perfection by Savile Row tailors, his tie knotted in a severe Windsor. He looked like he was heading to a board meeting, not greeting his firstborn children. "Patrick," Elena breathed, reaching a hand out. "Look, they're perfect." Patrick didn't look at the bassinets. He didn't even glance at the weeping nurse, who quickly excused herself to give them privacy. He walked to the foot of the bed, his polished Oxfords clicking ominously on the linoleum. "I'm glad the delivery went well, Elena," he said. His voice was smooth, detached, the same tone he used when firing a mid-level manager. "It makes this easier." Elena frowned, her hand falling back onto the sheets. "Easier? What are you talking about?" Patrick reached into his leather briefcase and pulled out a thick blue folder. He tossed it onto the bed, right over her legs. It landed with a heavy thud that made Elena flinch. "Divorce papers," he stated simply. "I've already signed. My lawyers, Goldman and Firth, have drawn up the terms. It's ironclad." The room seemed to tilt. The heart monitor sped up. Beep, 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 betraying her panic. "Patrick, I just gave birth 20 minutes ago," she whispered, the shock numbing her extremities. "We just had triplets. Your sons." "They are your sons, Elena," Patrick sneered, finally glancing at the babies with a look of mild disgust, as if they were spilled wine on a white carpet. "I never signed up for a litter. I wanted an heir, maybe 2. Not a circus. Do you have any idea what 3 screaming infants will do to my lifestyle? To my image? I'm the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I can't have vomit on my suits and a wife who looks like..." He gestured vaguely at her, lying sweaty and exhausted in the hospital gown. Like a dairy cow. "We've been married 5 years, Elena cried, the tears finally spilling over. "I supported you when you were coding in a basement. I worked double shifts at the diner to pay for your servers. And I paid you back," Patrick shot back coldly. "I bought you that house in the suburbs. I bought you a car. We're square. But I'm moving on to a different phase of life. A phase that requires a partner who fits the part." He checked his watch, a Patek Philippe she had saved for 3 years to buy him for his 30th birthday. "Tiffany is waiting in the car," he added, delivering the final blow with casual cruelty. "Tiffany," Elena choked out. "Your assistant. She's 22. "She's 23, and she's vibrant, Elena. She doesn't smell like formula and desperation. Now the terms are simple. You get the minivan. You get a small stipend for 6 months. After that, you're on your own. I'm keeping the house, the accounts, and the portfolio. You signed a prenup, remember? I signed it because I trusted you, and the prenup said infidelity voids your protection." Patrick laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Good luck proving infidelity. Tiffany and I have been very discreet, and even if you could, I have a team of 12 lawyers on retainer who cost more per hour than you'll make in a lifetime. Do you really want to drag those 3 things?" He pointed at the babies. "Through a court battle you will lose? Sign the papers, Elena. Take the stipend. Go back to whatever trailer park you crawled out of." He leaned in close, his cologne, Santal 33, expensive and overpowering, filling her nose. "You're a burden, Elena. You always were. You're just a small-town girl who got lucky for a few years. Luck ran out." He turned on his heel and walked out. He didn't look back. The door clicked shut, leaving Elena alone with the humming lights and 3 sleeping babies who had just lost their father before they even opened their eyes. Elena didn't scream. She couldn't. The pain was too deep for sound. She just lay there, shivering, clutching the blue folder, realizing that the man she loved had planned this for months. He waited until she was physically at her weakest, burdened with 3 infants, to discard her. She looked at the triplets. They were innocent. They had nothing but her. "I won't let you down," she whispered to them, a fierce heat rising in her chest, burning through the heartbreak. "I don't know how, but I will make him regret this. I swear it." 3 days later, Elena was discharged. The hospital wheelchair ride to the curb felt like a funeral procession. The nurse, a kind woman named Margaret, helped her load the 3 car seats into the beat-up minivan Patrick had graciously allowed her to keep. "Do you have someone to call, honey?" Margaret asked, looking concerned at Elena's pale face. "No," Elena said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just me." She had no family. Her mother had died when she was 10, and she had never known her father. Just a name on a birth certificate, Arthur Penhaligon, a man her mother refused to speak of. She had no siblings. Patrick had been her entire world. She drove to a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city, the Blue Jay Inn. It was the only place she could afford with the cash she had hidden in her sock drawer, money Patrick hadn't known about. The stipend he promised hadn't arrived yet, and his lawyers were already emailing her threats about vacating the suburban house she hadn't even returned to. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and lemon cleaner. It was cramped. Elena set up a makeshift nursery, using drawer linings and pillows on the floor. For the next 2 weeks, Elena lived in a blur of exhaustion, feeding 3 babies, changing diapers, and crying silently in the bathroom while they slept. She counted every penny. She bought generic diapers and watered down her own food to afford formula. She watched Patrick on the news. Vertex Systems stock was soaring. There were paparazzi photos of him and Tiffany on a yacht in the Mediterranean. Tiffany was wearing a diamond necklace that looked suspiciously like the one Patrick had claimed was too expensive for their anniversary last year. Elena felt a rage building in her gut, a cold, hard stone of anger. But anger didn't buy diapers. One rainy Tuesday, while she was trying to soothe a crying Leo, a knock came at the motel door. Elena froze. Had Patrick sent someone to take the car? To harass her more? She cracked the door open, keeping the chain on. Standing there was a man who looked entirely out of place at the Blue Jay Inn. He was older, perhaps in his 60s, wearing a tweed suit that looked older than Eleanor, but cost more than the motel itself. He held a black umbrella and a briefcase. "Miss Elena." "Vance?" he asked, peering through rain-flecked spectacles. "It's Miss Rossi. Wait, no, it's just Elena," she corrected herself, reverting to her maiden name. "Who are you?" "My name is Reginald Hives. I am a senior partner at the law firm Hives, Calloway & Moore, based in London." "May I come in? It is rather wet out here, and the matter is of extreme urgency." Elena hesitated. "London. I don't have money for a lawyer, Mr. Hives. If Patrick sent you—" "I do not know a Patrick," Reginald said, a look of distaste crossing his face. "I am here regarding your father." Elena unlocked the door. Reginald stepped in, his eyes scanning the cramped, messy room. He saw the triplets sleeping on the bed, the drying laundry hanging over the lamps, the instant noodle cups on the nightstand. His expression softened into something profound. Pity. No. Respect. "My father," Elena whispered. "My father is dead. Or, well, I never knew him." "You never met him," Reginald corrected gently. "But he knew of you. Your father was Arthur Penhaligon." "The name on my birth certificate." "Yes, but to the rest of the world, he was known as the Duke of Ashbourne and the majority shareholder of the Penhaligon Global Group, shipping, real estate, and pharmaceuticals." Elena laughed, a tired, frantic sound. "Okay, this is a joke. Is this a reality show? Patrick put you up to this to humiliate me, right?" Reginald didn't smile. He placed his briefcase on the wobbly table and snapped it open. He pulled out a document with a wax seal. "Arthur Penhaligon passed away 3 months ago. He had no legitimate heirs. His life was complicated. He searched for your mother for years, but she had covered her tracks well. We only located you 3 days ago, following the birth records of your children at St. Jude's." Reginald looked her in the eye. "The Penhaligon estate has been in probate, waiting for the DNA confirmation. We took a sample from your coffee cup at the hospital cafeteria. Forgive the intrusion. We needed to be sure before approaching you. The results were a 99.9% match." He slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a bank statement. "As the sole surviving heir, you inherit the title, although that is largely ceremonial these days. However, you also inherit the assets." Elena looked at the number. She blinked. She rubbed her eyes and looked again. There were 9 zeros. "This says $4 billion, she whispered. $4.2 billion after taxes," Reginald corrected. "Plus the estate in Surrey, the penthouse in Manhattan, the villa in Tuscany, and the controlling interest in Penhaligon Global. You are, quite effectively, one of the wealthiest women in the Northern Hemisphere." Elena sat down on the bed, narrowly missing Sam's tiny foot. The room spun. $4 billion. "Why?" she asked. "Why me?" "Because you are his blood. And because," Reginald hesitated, looking around the squalid room, "it appears you are in need of a change in circumstance." Elena looked at the triplets. Then she thought of Patrick. She thought of his sneer. She thought of the dairy cow comment. She thought of Tiffany laughing on that yacht. Patrick thought he had crushed her. He thought he was the shark and she was the minnow. He had divorced her to protect his millions, thinking she was a liability. He had no idea that the woman he just discarded was now worth 10 times his entire company. Elena looked up at Reginald, a new fire igniting in her eyes. The exhaustion seemed to evaporate, replaced by a steel spine she didn't know she possessed. "Mr. Hives," she said, her voice steady. "Does the Penhaligon Group have a good legal team?" Reginald smiled, a thin, shark-like grin. "The best in Europe, madam." "Good," Elena said. "I don't just want to claim my inheritance. I want to buy something." "Real estate? A car?" "No," Elena said, standing up. "I want to buy Vertex Systems. I want to buy my ex-husband's company, and I want to do it before he even knows who I am." Reginald's smile widened. "I believe that can be arranged. We call it a hostile takeover. It is a specialty of ours." "Then let's get to work," Elena said. "But first, get me and my boys out of this motel." 3 years had passed since the rain-slicked night at the Blue Jay Inn. But for Elena, it felt like a lifetime. The woman who sat at the head of the mahogany conference table in the penthouse suite of the Penhaligon building in Manhattan bore little resemblance to the exhausted mother in the maternity ward. The cheap cotton maternity clothes were gone, replaced by a tailored crimson blazer by McQueen that cost more than the house Patrick had kicked her out of. Her hair, once a messy bun held together by stress and drugstore clips, was now a sleek, dark curtain that framed a face sharpened by determination and the best dermatologists in New York. But the biggest change was in her eyes. The fear was gone. In its place was the cold, calculating shimmer of a predator observing its prey. "Report," Elena said, her voice low but commanding. Reginald Hives, looking slightly older but no less sharp, tapped a button on the projection screen. A graph appeared, a jagged red line plummeting downward. "As you predicted, madam," Reginald said, "Vertex Systems is hemorrhaging capital. Their latest product launch, the Vertex V-Home, was a catastrophic failure. The AI integration was buggy, and the privacy lawsuits are piling up." Eleanor studied the graph. It was a picture of incompetence. "And Patrick?" she asked, not looking away from the red line. "He is desperate," Reginald replied, sliding a dossier across the table. "He fired his chief technical officer last month, a man who had been with the company since the garage days, because he disagreed with Patrick's vision. He replaced him with—" Reginald paused, a dry cough escaping him. "Tiffany's younger brother, a boy fresh out of college with a degree in marketing, not engineering." Elena let out a short, sharp laugh. "Classic Patrick. He always valued loyalty to his ego over competence. What is his cash flow status? Critical. He has leveraged his personal assets to keep the stock price afloat. He mortgaged the house, the one he kicked you out of. He even sold the yacht. And the creditors? They are circling. Specifically, the Bank of Geneva holds the majority of his debt, roughly $150 million. Elena leaned back in her chair, tapping a manicured fingernail against the glass tabletop. "Buy it!" Reginald raised an eyebrow. "The debt? It is a risky asset, madam. If Vertex goes under, you lose the investment." "I don't want the money, Reginald," Elena said, her eyes turning to steel. "I want the leverage. If I own his debt, I own him. I can call in the loan whenever I choose. I can force bankruptcy. I can strip him of his CEO title." "Very well," Reginald nodded, making a note. "I will instruct our shell company, Trinity Holdings, to acquire the debt package by close of business today. He will be notified that his debt has been sold, but the identity of the buyer will remain anonymous." "Good." Elena stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. Below her, Central Park was a rectangle of green in a sea of grey. Somewhere down there, her 3 sons, Leo, Sam, and Toby, were with their private tutor, learning French and piano. They were happy. They were safe. They barely remembered the father who had called them a litter. But Eleanor remembered. She remembered every word. The last 3 years hadn't just been about spending money. It had been a grueling boot camp. Under Reginald's tutelage, Eleanor had essentially earned an MBA in real time. She learned how to read balance sheets, how to negotiate mergers, how to spot a lie in a boardroom, and how to weaponize silence. She had hired voice coaches to smooth out her accent and image consultants to reconstruct her wardrobe. She wasn't just Elena anymore. She was Elena Penhaligon, the Iron Duchess of the business world. "There is one more thing," Reginald said, interrupting her thoughts. "The Tech Innovators Gala is this Saturday. It is the premier networking event of the season. Everyone who is anyone in the tech sector will be there." "And Patrick? He has purchased a platinum table. He is looking for investors. He needs a miracle to save Vertex." Elena turned from the window, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "Then let's give him a miracle," she said softly. "I think it's time Elena Penhaligon made her American debut. Book a table, Reginald, right next to his." "Are you sure you are ready to face him?" Reginald asked gently. "It has been 3 years, but emotions can be unpredictable." Eleanor walked back to the table and picked up a framed photo of her triplets, laughing on a beach in the Maldives. "I'm not the woman he divorced, Reginald. That woman died in the Blue Jay Inn. The woman going to that gala is the one who is going to bury him." She set the photo down. "Make sure the press is there. I want the world to see the moment the ground shifts beneath his feet." The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was dripping with crystals and desperation. It was the annual Tech Innovators Gala, an event where net worth was worn like armor and handshakes were legally binding contracts. Patrick adjusted his bow tie, feeling the sweat trickle down his back despite the aggressive air conditioning. He looked tired. The last 3 years had aged him. His hairline was receding, and the arrogant sparkle in his eyes had been replaced by a nervous twitch. Beside him, Tiffany was busy taking selfies. She wore a dress that was too bright, too tight, and entirely inappropriate for the somber mood of the current market. "Stop it, Tiffany," Patrick hissed, grabbing her wrist as she tried to photograph her champagne glass. "We are here to find money, not to boost your Instagram engagement." Tiffany yanked her arm back, pouting. "You're no fun anymore, Patrick. You used to buy me things. Now all you do is scream about overhead and burn rates. Maybe if you weren't such a loser, we wouldn't be begging for cash." Patrick gritted his teeth. He wanted to scream. He wanted to tell her that she was the overhead, but he couldn't. He was trapped. "Just smile," he ordered. "Look wealthy. If they smell fear, they won't invest." He scanned the room. He needed $5 million just to make payroll next month. He had pitched to 3 venture capitalists already. 2 had laughed in his face, and 1 had walked away while he was mid-sentence. Suddenly, the hum of conversation in the ballroom died down. A hush swept across the room, starting from the grand staircase and rippling outward like a wave. Heads turned. Whispers ignited. "Who is that?" Someone muttered near Patrick. "Is that the Penhaligon heiress?" Another whispered. "I heard she moved to New York." Patrick turned toward the staircase. Descending the marble steps was a vision in midnight blue velvet. The woman was tall, statuesque, moving with a grace that made everyone else in the room look clumsy. Her dress was modest, yet incredibly sensual, hugging curves that were feminine and powerful. Around her neck hung a sapphire pendant the size of a quail's egg, surrounded by diamonds that caught the light and threw it back with blinding intensity. She was flanked by 2 security guards and an older, distinguished man in a tuxedo. Patrick squinted. There was something familiar about the shape of her face, the high cheekbones, the dark, expressive eyes. "Wow," Tiffany said, actually lowering her phone. "That necklace must be worth more than your company, Patrick." The woman reached the bottom of the stairs. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. She didn't look at anyone. She walked straight toward the VIP section, right toward the table next to Patrick's. As she passed him, the scent of her perfume hit him. It wasn't the cheap vanilla spray Elena used to wear. It was complex, jasmine, oud, and something metallic, like cold hard cash. She sat down, her back to him. "Who is she?" Patrick asked a passing waiter, grabbing his arm. "That, sir?" the waiter whispered reverently. "That is Eleanor Penhaligon, the majority shareholder of Trinity Holdings. She just arrived from London." "Penhaligon," Patrick muttered. "Old money. Serious money." He straightened his jacket. This was it. This was the target. If he could charm a European heiress who didn't know about his recent failures, he could secure the funding. "Stay here," he told Tiffany. "I'm coming with you," she snapped. "No, you'll ruin it. Sit down." Patrick took a deep breath, put on his best visionary CEO smile, and approached the table. "Excuse me," Patrick said, his voice smooth as silk. "I couldn't help but notice your entrance. Stunning. I'm Patrick Vance, CEO of Vertex Systems." He extended a hand. The older man, Reginald, looked at Patrick's hand with mild amusement, but didn't shake it. The woman in the blue dress slowly turned around. For a second, the world stopped. Patrick stared. He looked at her eyes. He looked at her mouth. It was impossible. The woman he remembered was frumpy. She had dark circles under her eyes. She wore stained sweatpants. She smelled like baby powder and onions. She was weak. This woman was a goddess. Her skin was luminous. Her makeup was flawless. Her gaze was terrifyingly direct. "Mr. Vance," she said. Her voice was lower, richer, with a polished transatlantic accent that sounded nothing like the girl from the diner he had married. "I've heard of you." Patrick blinked, trying to shake off the hallucinations. It couldn't be Eleanor. Eleanor was destitute. Eleanor was probably working at a checkout counter in Ohio. This was Eleanor Penhaligon. It was just a coincidence, a resemblance. You have?" Patrick stammered, his charm faltering. "Yes," she said, picking up her wine glass. "I hear you are having some liquidity issues." Patrick stiffened. "Competitor rumors. Vertex is stronger than ever. We are actually opening a funding round for a select few sophisticated investors. I thought a woman of your stature might be interested in the future of tech." Elena smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a cat watching a mouse run into a glue trap. "I am very interested in your future, Patrick," she said, using his first name with a familiarity that made the hair on his arm stand up. "But I don't invest in concepts. I invest in leadership. And frankly, the market suggests your leadership is lacking." Patrick flushed red. "I built this company from nothing. And you seem intent on returning it to nothing," she countered coolly. "However, my firm, Trinity Holdings, specializes in distressed assets. We might be willing to offer a lifeline." "Distressed assets?" Patrick bristled. "We are not distressed. Your debt to the Bank of Geneva says otherwise." She took a sip of wine. 150 million. Due in full in 60 days. Unless, of course, the debt holder grants an extension. Patrick went pale. "How do you know about that? That's private financial data." Information is a commodity, Mr. Vance. I buy the best. She leaned forward, the sapphire catching the light. Here is my offer. Trinity Holdings will inject $50 million into Vertex, enough to clear your immediate hurdles and launch your next product. Patrick's heart hammered. $50 million. It was salvation. What are the terms? He asked, trying not to sound too eager. 40% equity, she said calmly, and a seat on the board. I want oversight. 40%? That's robbery. I'd lose controlling interest. You'll lose the whole company in 2 months if you don't take it, she shrugged, turning back to Reginald. Think about it. But don't take too long. My interest wanes quickly. Patrick stood there, torn. He looked at Tiffany, who was now flirting with a waiter. He looked at the room full of people who refused to look him in the eye. He looked back at Elena Penhaligon. I need to run it by legal, he said. You have until 9 a.m. Monday, she said, dismissing him with a wave of her hand. Patrick walked away, his legs feeling like jelly. He had the deal. He had the money. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just signed a deal with the devil. And why? Why did she look so much like his ex-wife? As he walked away, Eleanor watched him go. He didn't recognize you, Reginald noted softly. People see what they expect to see. He expected a victim. He cannot comprehend you as a victor. He will, Eleanor whispered, her hand tightening around the stem of the glass until her knuckles turned white. Monday morning, when he signs that contract, he is signing his death warrant. Once I have 40%, and the debt, I own him. She took a sip of the vintage Pinot Noir. It tasted like victory. Prepare the car, Reginald. I want to be home to tuck the boys in, and prepare the legal team. We are going to dismantle Vertex Systems piece by piece, starting from the inside. Monday morning at Vertex Systems headquarters was usually a somber affair, but today the air crackled with a terrified energy. The rumors had spread over the weekend like a virus. A mysterious European investor had bought a massive stake in the company, and she was coming to take her seat on the board. Patrick stood in the lobby, checking his reflection in the glass doors for the 10th time. He had signed the papers at 8 a.m. The $50 million was already in the corporate account, temporarily staving off the bankruptcy lawyers. He felt a surge of returned confidence. He had survived. He was a genius. He had charmed the Ice Queen, Elena Penhaligon, into saving him. She's here, Tiffany whispered loudly, looking up from her phone. She was wearing a hot pink dress that clashed violently with the minimalist grey aesthetic of the lobby. Do you think she'll like my new office decor? Shut up, Tiffany, Patrick hissed. Just try to look professional, and hide that purse. It looks fake. A fleet of 3 black SUVs pulled up to the curb. The doors opened in unison. From the lead vehicle, Reginald Hives emerged, followed by 4 men in severe grey suits, auditors. From the center vehicle, Elena stepped out. She wore a white power suit that looked sharp enough to cut glass, her dark hair pulled back in a severe, elegant chignon. She didn't smile. She walked through the revolving doors as if she owned the building, which, effectively, she now almost did. Ms. Penhaligon, Patrick said, stepping forward with his hand extended, a wide, plastic smile plastered on his face. Welcome to Vertex. I'm thrilled to embark on this partnership. Elena ignored his hand. She walked past him, her heels clicking a rhythmic beat of doom on the marble floor. Conference room. Now, she commanded, not breaking stride. And bring the payroll records. Patrick blinked, his smile faltering. Payroll. We usually start with a tour of the R&D lab. I'm not a tourist, Patrick, she said, stopping and turning slowly to face him. The lobby went deadly silent. I own 40% of this sinking ship. I want to know why it's leaking. Conference room. 5 minutes. The meeting was a bloodbath. Eleanor sat at the head of the table, Patrick's usual seat. Patrick was relegated to the side, sweating through his shirt. Reginald stood by the screen, projecting spreadsheets that made everyone in the room cringe. "Explain this," Elena said, pointing a laser pointer at a line item. "Consultant fees, $25,000 a month, paid to a T. Miller. Who is T. Miller?" Patrick coughed. That is Tiffany, my executive assistant." "Executive assistant?" Elena raised an eyebrow. "Since when do assistants make $300,000 a year? What exactly does she consult on?" Tiffany, sitting in the back corner filing her nails, looked up. "I help with vibe curation and social media synergy." "Vibe curation?" Elena repeated, her voice dripping with disdain. "Reginald?" "Yes, madam." "Fire her." The room gasped. Tiffany dropped her nail file. "You can't do that!" Patrick shouted, standing up. "She's my fiancée." "She is an unnecessary expense," Elena said calmly, not even looking at him. "The contract you signed this morning gives me veto power over all personnel decisions exceeding $50,000 annually. She goes, or the deal is void, and I withdraw the $50 million. Your choice." Patrick looked at Tiffany. He looked at the terrified board members. He looked at his bank balance in his mind. "Patrick!" Tiffany shrieked. "Do something!" Patrick sank back into his chair, defeated. "Pack your things, Tiff!" "You coward!" Tiffany screamed, throwing a water bottle at him before storming out. "I'm keeping the ring." Elena didn't flinch. She just turned the page of the dossier. "Now that we've trimmed the fat," she continued, "let's talk about the Vertex V Home recall. My auditors tell me you knew about the security flaw 6 months ago but launched anyway. Is that true?" Patrick went pale. It was a calculated risk." "It was fraud," Elena corrected. "And it exposes this company to class action lawsuits that could bankrupt us 10 times over. As of this moment, I am initiating a forensic audit of every decision you have made in the last 5 years." "You can't come in here and dismantle my legacy," Patrick sputtered, his face turning a blotchy red. Elena leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his. For a second, Patrick felt a flicker of recognition, a sense of déjà vu so strong it made him dizzy. The way she tilted her head. It reminded him of Eleanor. But that was impossible. This woman was a shark. Eleanor was a mouse. "Your legacy is a house of cards, Patrick," she said softly. "And I'm the wind. If you want to keep your title as CEO, you will sit down, shut up, and let me fix your mess. Do you understand?" Patrick swallowed hard. He nodded. "Good," Elena said, standing up. "I'll be taking the corner office. The lighting in this one is dreadful." As she walked out, leaving a stunned room in her wake, Elena allowed herself a small, secret smile. Firing Tiffany was just the appetizer. The main course was yet to come. She checked her phone. A text from the private investigator she had hired. "We found the offshore accounts. He's been skimming off the top for 2 years. We have the wire transfers." Elena's grip on her phone tightened. Not only was he incompetent, he was a thief. He had stolen from the company while she was scrubbing floors to buy baby formula. "Reginald," she said, as they walked down the hallway toward Patrick's, her, new office. "Yes, madam?" "Call the Bank of Geneva. Tell them we're ready to execute Phase 2. 2 months later, Vertex Systems was unrecognizable. Under Elena's relentless leadership, the stock had stabilized. She had settled the lawsuits, fired the nepotism hires, including Tiffany's brother, and refocused the engineering team. But for Patrick, it was a living hell. He was CEO in name only. He spent his days in a small, windowless office near the restrooms, stripped of his executive privileges. He watched as Eleanor Penhaligon charmed the board, dazzled the press, and commanded the loyalty of his staff. He hated her, and he feared her. But the final blow came on a rainy Tuesday, exactly 3 years and 2 months after the triplets were born. Patrick was summoned to the boardroom. When he entered, the mood was funereal. The entire board was there. So were the lawyers, and at the head of the table sat Eleanor, looking more regal and terrifying than ever. "Sit down, Patrick," she said. "What is this?" Patrick demanded, trying to muster some of his old arrogance. "Another performance review? I've done everything you asked." "This isn't a review," Reginald said, stepping forward. "This is a foreclosure." Patrick froze. "What?" "The Bank of Geneva has called in your personal loan," Reginald explained, holding up a document. "The $150 million you borrowed to prop up the stock? It's due. Today." I have an extension," Patrick stammered. "I have a verbal agreement." "Verbal agreements don't hold up against the new owner of the debt," Elena said coolly. Patrick whipped his head toward her. "New owner? Who bought my debt?" "Trinity Holdings," Elena said. "Me." Patrick felt the floor drop out from under him. You own my debt. You own my house, my car, everything?" "Everything," Elena confirmed. "And since you cannot pay, I am exercising my right to seize collateral. That includes your remaining shares in Vertex Systems. As of this moment, you are fired. You are bankrupt. You have nothing." Patrick fell to his knees. It wasn't a figure of speech. His legs gave out, and he hit the carpet with a dull thud. "Please," he begged, tears streaming down his face. "Please, Miss Penhaligon, don't do this. I built this. This is my life. I'll do anything. I'll work for free. I'll be a janitor. Just don't take my company." The board members looked away, uncomfortable with the display of raw desperation. "Leave us," Elena commanded the room. The board members, lawyers, and Reginald filed out silently, closing the heavy oak doors behind them. Elena and Patrick were alone. Elena stood up and walked slowly around the table until she was standing over him. He looked pathetic. The charcoal suit was wrinkled, his hair thinning, his eyes bloodshot. "Get up," she said. Patrick scrambled to his feet, wiping his nose. "Elena, Ms. Penhaligon, please, why are you doing this? I've never done anything to you. I don't even know you." Elena laughed. It was a dark, hollow sound. "You don't know me?" she asked. She reached up and unclasped the diamond earring she was wearing. She took a wet wipe from her pocket and scrubbed the heavy contouring makeup off her cheekbones. She pulled the pins from her hair, letting it fall loose around her shoulders in a familiar, messy wave. "Look closer, Patrick," she whispered. Patrick squinted. He looked at her eyes, the one thing money couldn't change. He looked at the small scar on her chin from when she fell off a bike when they were dating. His eyes widened. His jaw dropped. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. Elena," he rasped. "My Elena?" "Not your Elena," she corrected sharply. "I was never yours. I was just the dairy cow, remember? The burden? The one who smelled like formula and desperation?" Patrick stumbled back, hitting the wall. No, it's impossible. You were broke. You were living in a motel. You're dead. Or gone." "I was broke because you stole everything from me." Elena stepped closer, her voice rising with the fury of 1,000 storms. "You left me in that hospital with 3 newborns. You threw divorce papers at me while I was bleeding. You kicked your own sons out onto the street so you could play playboy with your secretary. I didn't know," Patrick stammered. "I didn't know about the money. Of course you didn't. You only care about people when they have value to you. Elena spat. Well, Patrick, do I have value now? Do I fit the part now? Elena, please. Patrick reached out, trying to grab her hand. We can fix this. We're a family. The boys. My sons. I want to see them. I want to be a father. Elena slapped him. The sound echoed through the empty room like a gunshot. Don't you dare speak their names, she hissed. You gave up your right to be a father when you called them a litter. They don't know you. They never will. To them, their father is a ghost. And after today, that's all you'll be to the world, too. She walked back to the head of the table and pressed the intercom button. Security, she said calmly. Remove the trespasser from the building. Elena, no, you can't do this. I'm your husband. Patrick screamed as the doors burst open and two burly guards grabbed him. Ex-husband, she corrected, turning her back on him to look out the window at the skyline she now conquered. As they dragged him out, kicking and screaming, Patrick shouted one last thing. I made you. You're nothing without me. Elena watched his reflection disappear in the glass. You didn't make me, Patrick, she whispered to the silence. You broke me, and in the cracks, I built a fortress. She picked up her phone. Reginald, it's done. Release the press statement, and tell the boys I'll be home early for dinner. We're having pizza. The fall of Patrick Vance was as spectacular as it was public. The news cycle devoured him. Tech CEO ousted in hostile takeover, read the headlines. From Silicon Valley to bankruptcy, the Patrick Vance story. Without his assets, his friends evaporated. The elite social circles of New York, which tolerated him only for his potential utility, closed their heavy iron gates. He was a pariah. 6 months after the boardroom confrontation, snow began to fall on the city. It was a cold, biting winter, much like the one Elena had endured in the motel. Elena sat in the back of her chauffeured Rolls-Royce, watching the snowflakes melt against the warm glass. She was on her way to inspect a new acquisition, a struggling chain of diners she planned to revitalize. It was a sentimental project. She wanted to create a scholarship fund for single mothers working in the service industry. We are approaching the location, madam, the driver announced. The car pulled up to a small, Greasy Spoon diner in Queens. It was called the Rusty Spoon. It looked tired, the neon sign flickering ominously. Elena stepped out, wrapped in a cashmere coat. She entered the diner. The bell above the door jingled. The smell of frying bacon and old coffee hit her, a scent that used to trigger anxiety, but now just reminded her of how far she had traveled. She sat in a booth near the back. The place was understaffed. A manager was shouting at someone in the kitchen. Hurry up with that order. Table 4 has been waiting 10 minutes. The kitchen door swung open, and a man hurried out, balancing 3 plates of pancakes on his arm. He wore a stained white apron and a paper hat. He looked exhausted, his face gaunt, his movements jerky and nervous. He placed the plates down at table 4, mumbling an apology to the customers, who didn't even look at him. As he turned to head back to the kitchen, he froze. He saw her. Eleanor didn't look away. She stared right at him. It was Patrick. He looked 10 years older. The arrogance was scrubbed clean from his face, replaced by a deep, etched weariness. He held a dirty rag in his hand. He looked at Elena's coat, her jewelry, the quiet power she exuded. Then he looked down at his own grease-stained apron. He walked over slowly, as if pulled by gravity. "Elena," he whispered. "Patrick," she replied, her voice neutral. No anger, no pity, just acknowledgement. You bought this place?" he asked, his voice cracking. "I did. I'm turning it into a training center. Better wages, childcare support, benefits." Patrick let out a shaky breath. "I applied to 50 companies. No one would hire me. They all Googled me. The articles, the things you said in the press. They destroyed my reputation." "You destroyed your reputation, Patrick," she corrected him gently. "I just turned on the lights." He gripped the back of the booth. "I live in a basement apartment. I take the bus. I miss my life." "You miss the things," Elena said. "You never missed the life. Because life is about people. And you never cared about people." She reached into her purse and pulled out a photo. It was a Christmas card. Leo, Sam, and Toby were smiling, wearing matching red sweaters, standing in front of a massive tree at the Penhaligon estate. They looked happy, loved, whole. She slid the photo across the table. "They ask about their father sometimes," she said. Patrick stared at the photo. His hands trembled as he reached for it, but he didn't touch it. He just looked. What do you tell them?" "I tell them that he is gone," Elena said, "that he made a choice to walk a different path, and that we hope he finds his way." Patrick looked up, tears pooling in his eyes. Can I keep this?" Elena looked at the man who had left her to rot. She thought about the cruelty, the dairy cow comment, the divorce papers on the hospital bed. Part of her wanted to snatch the photo back, to tell him he deserved nothing, but she wasn't him. "Keep it," she said, standing up. "It's the only part of them you'll ever have." She adjusted her coat. "The manager here. He's being replaced tomorrow. The new management will offer you a raise, not because you deserve it, but because my son's father shouldn't starve. Consider it the final settlement." She walked toward the door. "Elena," Patrick called out. She paused, her hand on the brass handle. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "I'm so sorry." Eleanor didn't turn around. She looked at her reflection in the glass of the door, a strong, wealthy, independent mother of 3. "I know," she said softly, "but some bills can't be paid with apologies." The bell jingled as she stepped out into the cold air. The snow was falling harder now, covering the dirty streets in a blanket of pristine white. She got into the car, where Reginald was waiting with a warm cup of tea. "Everything in order, madam?" Reginald asked. "Yes, Reginald." Elena smiled, watching the diner disappear in the rearview mirror. "Everything is perfectly balanced." "Home?" "Home," she agreed. As the car merged into the traffic, heading back toward the warmth of her estate and the laughter of her 3 boys, Eleanor finally let out a breath she felt she had been holding for 3 years. The ledger was closed, the debt was paid, and for the first time in a long time, the future wasn't something to fear, it was something to own. And that is the story of how Elena turned her heartbreak into an empire. It's a powerful reminder that the people you step on today might be the ones holding the keys to your future tomorrow. Patrick thought power was about suits and bank accounts, but Elena proved that real power comes from resilience, love, and the courage to rebuild when everything falls apart. Karma doesn't always happen immediately, but as we saw with Patrick, when it hits hard. He traded his family for a fleeting image of success, only to end up serving pancakes to the woman he discarded. What would you have done if you were Elena? Would you have given Patrick a second chance to see his kids, or did he deserve to be cut off completely? And do you think she was too harsh at the end, or was it the perfect justice? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal and sweet revenge, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on the next dramatic story. We have a crazy one coming up next week about a cheating husband who realizes his wife is his boss's daughter, and you don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, listening, and remember, be careful who you underestimate.